Hey guys, this is Austin. We take a look at a lot of budget computers, but this is something a little bit different. At $130, is this Dell Inspiron worth it? At $130, not only is this one of the cheapest brand new Windows laptops you can find, but impressively, it's made by a real company, not some random thing I've never heard of that's straight off of Amazon. Now what makes this kind of interesting is that not only is it going to be powered by an AMD processor, something a little bit different for these ultra sort of budget systems, but on top of that, it does come with a full year of Office 365, which by itself is like, what, $100? Now when it comes to spending $130 for a brand new laptop, you should expect a lot of accessories. So of course we do have the laptop itself here, as well as the power adapter, which is really nice and tiny. At $130, this is incredibly cheap. But what we're looking at least at first glance, is something that doesn't look all that different from a lot of the $170 to $200 Windows laptops out there. And one of the big reasons behind that, or at least one of the main differences, is that this is going to be running an AMD processor. Which is interesting because Intel basically gives away their processors at this price point. Actually, it doesn't feel that bad, to be totally honest. I mean, sure, it's going to be made out of plastic, and port-wise, there's, well, 2 USB ports and a micro SD card slot with an HDMI, so not exactly full-featured. But, I mean, it doesn't feel like they cut a lot of corners here. Now look at that, there's also going to be dual front-firing speakers. Not that they're going to be particularly large, but it beats having them on the bottom. I feel there's going to be a catch, though. There's gonna be a reason why this was $130 brand new. One of the main competitors for something like the Inspiron 11 is going to be this, the HP Stream. Now this overall design has been around for quite a few years. It's been slightly tweaked here and there, but this is going to be different in a few major ways, but the most obvious is going to be the processor. As opposed to being powered by an Intel Celeron processor, this guy instead is rocking an AMD A6 9220E. Unlike the Celeron, this guy is going to be based on AMD's last generation APU cores. So what that means is that you're going to be getting 2 steamroller cores that start at 1.6 gigahertz and can boost up to 2.4 gigahertz sometimes, and a little bit more emphasis on the sometimes in a second. But what that means is that you are going to be getting fairly low performance as opposed to a much more expensive computer, but in this sort of sub $200 category, it's actually going to be a pretty decent step up. It does feel like there's slightly too much performance for the fanless design to handle sometimes. So when you're doing intensive tasks such as Windows Update, a lot of times the bottom and especially the keyboard will get very warm to the touch. Now it's not going to be scalding hot or anything, but it does mean that you're going to be losing some performance thanks to throttling. Put it side by side with other similarly priced laptops with Celeron solutions, and you'll see this actually is going to perform pretty well. Now the only real knock against it is that it only does use single channel memory, but again, that's very similar to this sort of price point, and thankfully we do have a full 4 gigabytes of DDR4 on board. One of the biggest issues when you pick up a super cheap laptop like this is going to be with the storage. Both of these options are only going to give you 32 gigabytes of eMMC flash. Now it's going to be fine as far as speed, but storage-wise, it gives you almost nothing left out of the box. But anytime you actually have to do a major Windows update like I had to do when I first set up this laptop, you actually have to use external storage to get it to work. I had to plug in a USB drive to even get this thing fully up to date on Windows. If you pick up a laptop like this, it is basically a necessity to pick up at least a 64 or 128 gig micro SD card and let it live inside your SD card slot. Trust me when I say, even though it's going to add a little bit to the price, it is going to make this so much more usable. With Radeon graphics on board, this actually isn't going to be too bad, at least in theory. So of course, we have to try everyone's favorite game, Fortnite. Oh, actually, no, we don't. Just trust me, you don't want to play Fortnite on this. Of course, when it comes to spending $130 on a laptop, you're going to have to find some compromises. And one of the biggest ones with the Inspiron has to do with Wi-Fi. Now in 2018, pretty much everything has an AC solution, and typically those are going to be good for between 100 to 300 megabits per second down and up. This guy is using the nearly 10-year-old N standard, which is going to give you about 40 megabits up and down, and almost worse than that, it's going to be prone to a lot more interference because it's going to be 2.4 gigahertz only. For a cheap laptop, it's acceptable, it's something that I can live with, but it's not exactly going to be the best solution in the world. Something that doesn't suck, surprisingly, is the display. Now on paper, it's just a basic 11.6 inch 1366 by 768 panel. However, in practice, it actually doesn't look bad at all. Now sure, it's going to be a TN display, so you're not going to be getting great color or contrast or especially viewing angles, but it is going to be a lot better than pretty much anything in this price point. And impressively, it's actually going to look better than some laptops that cost double the price. It's not great, but it's definitely usable and a lot better than I was expecting.
The 10 is the most expensive iPhone ever. It has the biggest screen,
okay.
small bezel.
So the speakers aren't exactly great. Even though they are facing towards you, they're definitely on the quieter side, but I mean, there's a headphone jack. The only real issue I have with the way that the keyboard is laid out is going to be the size. Of course, this is going to be an 11-inch laptop and you expect things to be a little bit cramped, but what I didn't expect is that the actual keyboard itself is going to be smaller than a standard layout. Mind you, it's not going to be a huge difference, but it's enough to slightly trip me up. It's something you can get used to, but it feels like they had plenty of space on the side to expand the keyboard all the way out as opposed to using it on these bezels. Thankfully, it does have a Windows Precision touchpad. Mind you, it's going to be a little bit on the small side, but it really is not bad at all. So you're going to be getting all of the Windows 10 gestures, it's got a nice surface, accurate tracking. Honestly, some much more expensive laptops could learn a thing or two from this. It is nice to see at least decent input on a system that's going to be so cheap. Nothing really feels super plasticky or cheap. It's all going to be very, very usable. There's also some interesting touches with the design. So even small things like having a little bit of a curve here below the trackpad to make it easy to just get your finger in here and open it up. And you're also going to be getting something that's going to be a little bit smaller than the competition. All right, so this is a test of the Inspiron 11's webcam. Surprisingly, it actually runs at a full 720p, and at least based on first glance, it doesn't look bad. What's really going to make or break this laptop is the price. So at $130, which is what I was able to pick it up for, it is an incredibly good deal. Now, unfortunately, of course, with all the sales and stuff, you might actually end up finding it for a little bit more. Right now, taking a look around at other retailers, it's giving me something like $170 to $190. But even at a sub $200 price, it is hard to argue with this Inspiron. The Wi-Fi might not be amazing, but the rest of the computer actually is really, really not bad.